The display stand didn't make much noise when Griffin Baird's foot caught it. Just a low scrape of wood against marble, and then the soft, scattered sound of river stones rolling across the lobby floor of the Harrington Grand. What came after that was considerably louder. Griffin Baird had been in a bad mood since Calgary. The morning flight had left 40 minutes late. The car from Pearson's had taken a wrong exit somewhere near the Gardiner. And now, with less than 90 minutes before the most consequential meeting of his professional life, he was standing in a hotel corridor in downtown Toronto, looking at a woman crouched over a decorative display she had apparently placed in the middle of a walkway. She hadn't looked up when he'd come around the corner. She was in her early 40s, dressed plainly, dark slacks, a gray cardigan, and she was arranging white chrysanthemums with the unhurried focus of someone who had all morning and planned to use it. No visible badge, no lanyard, no uniform. Just a woman with her attention on the stems and the stones, and the small wooden tray they were sitting in. The tray that was now upended across the marble. "Leave it," Griffin said. The woman, Amara, had already risen from her crouch and was reaching for the nearest stone, moving without panic, the practiced calm of someone who had cleaned up disruptions that weren't their fault before. "I said leave it." He raised his hand, not a threatening gesture, a dismissive one which was somehow worse. "Look at this, who put something like this in the middle of a main corridor? This is an access route." "I'm sorry, sir, I can move it back to." "That's not the point." His voice lifted a register, not quite shouting but the kind of volume that carries. Near the reception desk a couple stopped walking. The concierge looked up. "I have a meeting in 85 minutes that represents $26 million in contracted value, and I nearly fell in your lobby because someone thought today was a good day to rearrange the decor in the middle of foot traffic." "It wasn't in the walkway when I started," Amara said. "I apologize for the—" "That's a deflection, not an answer." He turned toward the reception desk and raised his hand a second time. "Can I get the duty manager, please? And I'd like to know why someone with no identification is rearranging fixtures in the main corridor. For all anyone can tell, she doesn't work here." The concierge, a young man named Brett, who had been at this hotel for 2 years and had learned to move toward conflict rather than away from it, walked over with the studied neutrality of someone well practiced at standing between two people. "Mr. Baird, what can I help with?" "This." Griffin gestured broadly. This." He looked at Amara. "I want her moved out of this area. I'm meeting the chairman of Forsyth Biotech in less than 90 minutes, and I don't need to be navigating an obstacle course on the way to the elevator." Brett looked at Amara. A brief look, the kind exchanged between people who know something the third party doesn't. "I do work here," Amara said quietly, to no one in particular. "I've worked here for a long time." "Then work somewhere else this morning." Griffin straightened the front of his jacket. His 2 associates, a senior legal counsel named Harpreet, and the youngest member of the team, a junior analyst named Pavan Duda, stood several paces behind him, carry-on bags in hand, eyes on the floor. Neither spoke. This is exactly the problem with places like this. Standards fall, nobody notices, and then somebody nearly breaks their ankle on a decorative rock and everyone acts surprised. Amara had already begun collecting the scattered stones, placing them back into the tray one by one with the same deliberate care she'd started with. She didn't respond again. She didn't look up, she simply continued. Griffin watched her for a moment with the expression of a man who had expected some form of pushback and wasn't sure what to do with the absence of it. "Let's go," he said, turning toward the elevators. He walked through the lobby feeling the way he always felt before a major close, compressed, alert, certain. The kind of man who did not let disruptions cost him momentum. A stone on a marble floor was nothing. A confused maintenance worker was nothing. He was about to finalize the acquisition that would reposition Baird Pharma Distribution as the dominant logistics partner in the Western Canadian pharmaceutical corridor. He pressed the button for the 14th floor. He did not think about the woman in the lobby again. He was wrong to stop thinking about her. The conference suite on the 14th floor had a view of the lake on clear mornings. This was a clear morning, the water hard and flat and silver blue in the October light. Griffin noted it the way he noted details that confirmed things were going well. He took his seat at the side of the oval table, arranged his portfolio, and reviewed the term summary one final time while his team settled in around him. The Forsyth representatives filed in on schedule, the 2 senior VPs he'd dealt with during the preliminary rounds, the CFO, a legal pair he recognized from the term sheet correspondence. Professional nods, handshakes, the careful choreography of people who had been circling a deal long enough to be relieved it was nearly done. And then the door opened one more time. Griffin was looking down at his notes when the shift in the room reached him. Not a sound exactly. More like a change in air pressure, The way a room recalibrates when a particular kind of authority enters it. He looked up. She came in without announcement, without hurry. The way someone enters a space they have been in enough times that it no longer requires adjustment. The gray cardigan was gone. She wore a structured blazer in deep navy, her hair pulled back, a leather portfolio under her arm. She moved to the head of the table and sat down, and the room arranged itself around her without being asked. Griffin's chair stopped mid-adjustment. He recognized her in the way you recognize something that your brain insists cannot be what it appears to be. A full second of delay, and then the delay collapses, and there is nothing left except the fact of it. The woman from the lobby, the chrysanthemums, the river stones rolling across the marble. Her. The Forsyth CFO, a man named Gerald Atchison, cleared his throat and addressed the room. Good morning. Before we get into the formal session, I want to make sure everyone is properly introduced. He gestured toward the head of the table. Amara Yeboah, founder and managing director of Yeboah Capital Partners. Amara's firm holds a controlling equity position in Forsyth's parent group. Her endorsement of this acquisition is what finalizes the deal. Without her signature, we don't move forward. Griffin's mouth opened, no sound arrived. Amara looked at him. Not with anger, not with the satisfaction of someone who had been waiting for this. With a kind of clear, patient steadiness, the way someone waits when they have already decided what they are going to say, and have no particular feelings about saying it. We've met, she said. 3 words. They landed in the room like 3 different objects. Atchison looked at her. The VPs looked at each other. Pavan, sitting to Griffin's left, went completely still. Griffin's voice had a new texture. Flattened. I didn't know that you were. I know. Amara set her portfolio on the table but did not open it. That's actually what I'd like to spend a few minutes on before we begin. She looked at him directly, not unkindly, not aggressively, just clearly. About 45 minutes ago, I was in the lobby downstairs arranging a flower display near the east corridor. I do that, periodically. My mother opened this hotel 31 years ago in this city, and she passed 4 years back. I started coming in and doing some of the things she used to do herself. She was particular about the ground floor. She thought the first thing a person sees when they walk in should feel like someone cared enough to do it by hand. She paused. Your foot caught the stand. That was an accident. What happened after that wasn't. Griffin felt the table edge beneath his hands, something solid, unchanging. You told me I probably didn't belong in the building, Amara continued. You asked that I be removed from the area. You raised your voice in front of the front desk staff and other guests, over a few stones on a floor that took 30 seconds to fix. Mrs. Yeboah. His voice was careful now, careful in the way of someone navigating terrain that has become unreliable underfoot. If I'd known who you were, I would never have. That's exactly the problem, she said, and her voice was not a door slamming. It was something quieter and more final than that. How you speak to someone cannot depend on who they turn out to be. It has to start from the assumption that they are a person worth speaking to like a person. She let that rest in the air for a moment. I've been in rooms like this one my entire career. I've also worked in parking levels, service corridors, loading docks, places most people in those rooms never set foot in. And what I have learned, without exception, is that behavior in those places, the ones where a person assumes nobody who matters is watching, is the only reliable information you have about their character. Atchison did not look at Griffin. He was looking at the table. The acquisition itself is sound, Amara said, and she finally opened the portfolio. Your distribution infrastructure covers gaps in the Alberta and BC market that Forsyth has needed to address for 3 years. The numbers your team prepared are thorough, and I want to say that directly, because the people who built this case did good work. She glanced briefly down the table toward Pavan and Harpreet. But I built Yeboah Capital on one principle. We back companies whose leadership we would trust to make decisions about people, not just figures. Because the decisions that ultimately matter aren't the ones made in rooms like this. They're the ones made in lobbies and hallways and anywhere a person thinks the result doesn't count. She turned a page. What I observed this morning does not meet that standard. Griffin looked around the table. Atchison, the VPs, the legal team. He found no one who would return his eye. And beneath the anger that kept trying to surface and finding no useful shape to take, something else arrived. Slow, unwelcome, and completely honest. He had walked into a hotel lobby already coiled with pressure he hadn't dealt with, and he had released it onto a woman arranging flowers because she was there and he could. He had not paused once to consider what that said about him. He had walked away from it feeling cleared. He had been using people that way for a long time. He understood that now in this room, in a way he had not understood it an hour ago. The understanding did not make him feel better. It made him feel accurate, which was worse. The deal will proceed, Amara said. but with a restructured leadership arrangement. Operational integration will be led by your COO, Sandra Mercer. Based on your own documentation, she's been the logistical core of Baird Pharma for the better part of a decade. The deal is what it is because of her work, and this structure reflects that. She looked at Griffin steadily. Your equity position is unchanged, but the executive leadership role will belong to her. There was nothing to say. He understood that as he pushed back his chair and rose to his feet. There was no version of any sentence he could offer that would land correctly in this room, and so he offered none. He walked to the door, he opened it. He stepped out into the 14th floor hallway, and stood there for a moment in the particular silence of a corridor between decisions, the city visible in gray and silver through the window at the far end. He had come to this floor to sign the deal that would define his career. He was leaving with his company intact, and his name attached to nothing that mattered. He had arranged that himself, 45 minutes ago, in a lobby in under 4 minutes. He took the elevator down. He walked through the main corridor, past the spot near the east partition, where the chrysanthemums were now arranged neatly in their display. Stones placed back with care, nothing to indicate anything had happened there at all. He didn't stop. He pushed through the revolving doors and out into the October morning, where the city went on the way cities do, indifferent and continuous, fully unaware of what a person has just lost. 6 weeks later, on a Wednesday that had the flat gray quality of mid-November in Toronto, Amara was in the small cafe on the hotel's ground floor, the informal one, the one her mother had insisted on keeping casual with mismatched chairs and a menu on a chalkboard that still had her mother's handwriting in the upper left corner, slightly faded now, still entirely legible. She was working through a development proposal when someone stopped beside her table and didn't move on. She looked up. It took her a moment. He'd lost the tailored suit. He was wearing the structured navy shirt and dark slacks of a hotel floor trainee, a small program lanyard visible at his collar. Pavan Duda, the junior analyst from Griffin's team, the one who had looked at the lobby floor while his manager had shouted. "I thought it was you," he said. "Sit down, Pavan." He sat, with the careful posture of someone who has practiced being less certain of his welcome than he used to be. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," he said. "I do." He turned his coffee mug in both hands. "I left Baird 3 weeks after the meeting. I'd been there 4 years. I told myself it was a good position." He looked at the table. "After that morning, I couldn't stop thinking about the lobby, about how I stood there looking at my shoes. I didn't say a single word. I didn't." He started again. "I didn't do anything." "I wasn't angry at you," Amara said. "I know." That was almost harder. He finally looked at her. "I applied for the hotel management program because I'm not entirely sure how to explain it. Something about it felt like starting from the right place, learning the building from the ground up, the way it should probably work anyway." Amara was quiet for a moment. She looked out the cafe window at the street, where November light was doing its particular work, arriving low and sideways, turning ordinary things briefly important. Her mother had started this hotel with money, saved across 11 years of working 2 jobs in a city that did not make that easy. She had scrubbed her own floors for the first 3 years. She had managed the front desk at midnight and reviewed the books before 5 in the morning. She had worked every position in the building, not because she had to, but because she believed that a person who understood each part of a thing could not be fooled about any of it. She had told Amara once, in this same cafe during a slow Tuesday afternoon, "The people who think they're above a job will always be surprised by the job, and people who are always being surprised by their work don't understand the people doing it, and people who don't understand the people around them." She had shrugged with the precise pragmatism of someone who had been underestimated in at least 2 countries. They always end up surprised by themselves last of all. Amara had been 33 then. She had not yet built Yaboa Capital. She had not yet fully understood what her mother meant. She thought she understood it now. "The program is 8 months," she said. "You'll rotate through every department, including the ones that aren't interesting. Some of it is genuinely difficult. Some of it is just repetitive work that has to be done right, every time, regardless of who's watching." She closed the development proposal. "If you finish it and you want to talk about what's next, come find me." Pavan nodded. He looked like he was building towards something about gratitude, and then he seemed to reconsider whether that was what the moment called for. He stood, tucked the lanyard back under his collar, and walked toward the front of the cafe, with the careful attention of someone paying particular notice to where they put their feet. Amara watched him go. She picked up her coffee, now barely warm, and looked at the chalkboard above the counter, at her mother's handwriting in the corner, those 4 words in slightly faded chalk that had been there since the hotel's 2nd week of operation and had never been erased. Everyone belongs here, act accordingly. The November light moved in slow increments across the cafe floor. Amara stayed through a second coffee and most of the development proposal, listening to the quiet, purposeful sounds of a place that had been built by someone who understood that the true measure of anything was not how it performed for people who could do something for it. It was how it performed for everyone else.